Yo, you know what a jit is, right? Of course I do. It's like a term people use for a young person, usually someone who's not that experienced, or maybe just immature, right? Yeah, kinda. But there's more to it than just calling someone young. The way it's used today, you gotta dive into its history a little. It didn't always mean just young person or kid. Really? What's the deeper story behind it then? Okay, so the term jit actually comes from the word jitterbug. Wait, what? Jitterbug? Like the dance from the 40s? Yeah, exactly. The word jit actually evolved from there. Jitterbug was slang for someone who had energy, like someone jittery or anxious, right? And over time, people in the urban scene started shortening it. That's crazy. I had no idea that's where it came from. I always thought it was just something new people started saying to refer to a little kid or a young teenager. Nah, it's older than that. It's got roots in the 1930s and 1940s. In fact, back then, it wasn't necessarily used for kids. It was just someone who had a lot of energy, or maybe even someone who was jumpy or nervous. Man, I didn't know that at all. So it's like the energy thing stuck, but over time it got redefined to just mean a young person. Exactly. But here's where it gets more interesting. By the time it made its way into Florida slang, especially in places like Miami, the meaning started shifting again. That's when it became more about calling someone young, like a shorty, but with a little more edge. So it was kind of a flex or an insult, like you're young and inexperienced, so you don't know anything yet. Pretty much. And then it wasn't just young, it could also be someone who's a little bit reckless or just doesn't have their life together yet. You know how people say you're a jit when someone is doing something wild or not really thinking things through? Ah, so there's that bit of disrespect in it, like you're too young and dumb to understand what's going on. Exactly. It's a way to call someone out without being outright rude. Like you're saying you're a jit, and it's almost like you're trying to teach them something or show them they haven't earned their place yet. That's pretty intense for just a little word, huh? Yeah, man, it's got a lot of layers. But the term really started to blow up in the 2000s, especially when Florida rappers started using it in their music. That's when it became like an anthem for youth and street culture. I remember hearing it in a lot of songs, but I didn't know it had such a strong meaning behind it. It's crazy how words can evolve like that. It's wild. Like once you get a term in the right context and it's used in the right way, it just takes off. And people who hear it start adopting it. You know, in the 90s, it wasn't used that much. But as soon as it hit the rap scene, it was everywhere. I mean, think about how much rap and hip-hop shape culture, especially with slang. I bet a lot of people from outside of Florida wouldn't even know what a jit was if it wasn't for those tracks. 100%. That's the power of music and social media. It spreads slang quicker than anything else. But it's not just Florida anymore, right? Now you hear it all over the place. Yeah, it's kind of universal now. Even people outside of hip-hop circles are using it, right? Exactly. And now it's everywhere. But it's funny because the meaning has shifted a little bit. It's not always as negative anymore. Some people even use it in a playful or affectionate way, like that's my little jit. So now it's more like my little buddy or my little homie, right? Yeah, it can definitely have that meaning now. So it's evolved from this term with negative connotations to something that's kind of endearing in certain contexts. That's wild. It's crazy how slang words can change based on the environment they're in. So how did it go from being this kind of insult to being something people call their friends? It's all about the tone and the context. When you say you're a jit with a certain kind of energy, it's an insult. But if you're close to someone and you call them jit with a playful tone, it's not meant to hurt them. It's just like calling someone kid or bro. So it's all about how it's said? Exactly. Tone is everything in slang. If you say it with love, it's not the same as if you're throwing shade. That's how the word jit survived and evolved. It's versatile. You can be calling someone young and naive, or you could be calling them your young homie with respect. I'm starting to get it now. But what about when people call older people jits? Like, what does that mean? Oh, that's a newer twist. calling an older person a jit is kind of like saying they're acting immature or out of touch. It's like calling someone old but acting young. So if an older person is doing something wild or reckless, you could call them a jit to point out their immaturity. Man, that's a whole other level. So now it's not just about age, it's about how someone's acting regardless of their age. Exactly. It's about energy, attitude, and how someone's behaving, not just how old they are. It's like age doesn't protect you from being a jit if you're acting wild or reckless. So you're telling me I could be 30 years old and still get called a jit if I'm out here acting crazy? Yup, if you're out there doing childish things or being reckless, people might drop the jit on you, no matter how old you are. That's kind of funny, but also kind of harsh, though. It's almost like calling someone immature, but in a more street-smart way. That's exactly it. It's street slang with that little punch. It's shorthand for calling someone out on their behavior or age without getting too deep into it. I think I get it now. It's funny how a word that started out as a descriptor for someone full of energy turned into this whole multi-layered thing. It's got history, it's got culture, and it's got a lot of flexibility in how it's used. Yep, it's a perfect example of how language evolves. And that's the beauty of slang. It changes as cultures and communities change. What was once just a description of a nervous person is now a whole concept of young energy and behavior, with all kinds of interpretations. I'll never look at the word jit the same way again. That's the beauty of learning about slang. It's more than just words, it's a window into culture and history. True, and it just goes to show how much we can learn about a place, a time, or even a person just by the words they use. Exactly. Words carry a lot of weight if you know where to look. Man, that was an eye-opener. Thanks for breaking it down for me. Anytime, man. Slang is a whole rabbit hole. There's always more to discover. I'm definitely going to pay more attention next time I hear jit. I'll be thinking about all its layers and meanings. That's the way. It's all about understanding the context. Slang is never as simple as it seems. Yeah, it's like the more you know, the more you realize how deep it all goes. Exactly. Every word has its story, and some of them go way deeper than you'd expect.